Hello, my friends. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha, and today I'm so excited because I'm going to be giving you some middle grade recommendations in preparation for middle grade March. If you're new here on my channel, you may not know this, but I love middle grade books. I love them so much that I have a whole shelf of them that I have not read. I have a whole shelf of them that I have read. I even host a middle grade book club with a group of 8 to 12-year-olds that mean the world to me. So it should come as no surprise that I am so excited for middle grade March in March. So let's say you haven't heard of middle grade March. What is it? Who hosts it? How can I get on board with this? So let me tell you. Krista from Books and Jams, Amanda from The Curly Reader, and Katie from Life Between Words are all the hosts for middle grade March, and I am so excited because last year was really the first year that I delved into middle grade March, and I absolutely loved it. Middle grade March is one of the most magical times of the year where we take the whole month of March to mostly read middle grade. I do kind of try to break it up a little bit just so I don't get tired of reading middle grade, but that's basically what it's for. They do different prompts every year, which so far, it's like the beginning of February and I'm already thinking about March, so there have been no announcements just yet about middle grade March, but once they come up with those, once they do their videos, I'll go ahead and link them down in the description below. So I know some of you are going to be looking for middle grade book recommendations, so I wanted to give some today. I have filmed a middle grade recommendations video before, so I'll go ahead and link that up above and down below, and I've also recorded a middle grade graphic novel recommendations video that I will link in the description below as well. Without any further rambling, I'm going to go ahead and get started with some of my favorite middle grades. It should come as no surprise that I'm going to go ahead and start off with spooky middle grades because those are the best in my opinion. And the first one that I have here today is Ghost Girl by Ali Malinenko. This book came out last year and it was one of my most anticipated reads, and it was so good. This is a 5-star read for me, so let me tell you a little bit about Ghost Girl. Ghost Girl follows our main character Z Puckett, and Z loves ghost stories, but now she might just be living in one. It all started one dark and stormy night when a storm blows through and people go missing. They have a new principal at their school, and Z is seeing these large scary dogs and maybe even a ghost. Z proceeds to tell her classmates what she thinks she has seen, and the only one that believes her is her best friend Elijah. The mean girl in school, Nellie, ends up giving her the cruel nickname Ghost Girl. From there, we follow these 3 characters, Nellie, Elijah, and Z, as they start to unravel this mystery of what is going on in their town, why people's selfish wishes are coming true in the creepiest of ways, and I won't say anything more than that because if that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what will. This is a super creepy story that will chill you to the bone. There are instances of like creepy smiles and people just like really weirdly staring at you. If you think I don't know, I always think of the movie Truth or Dare, which I've never seen, but I've seen trailers for. It's the one with Lucy Hale, and the way they smile, that's how I imagine some of these people, but it's probably not that sinister. It probably looks more normal, but you just kind of see the evil behind their eyes. Anyways, I think this is super creepy. There's just very creepy elements throughout the whole thing. Spooky middle grade stories are some of my favorites, so if that's your vibe too, definitely check this one out. It was a 5-star, and I put it right up there with some previous recommendations of my favorite spooky middle grades like Small Spaces and Night Books, and this one is pretty close to being the top of my spooky middle grade favorites. The next spooky middle grade on my list is Behind the Bookcase by Mark Steensland and illustrated by Kelly Murphy. This was a book that I had on my shelves for a really long time, and I initially picked it up because it reminded me a little bit of Coraline, just because you have this creepy small doorway, this black cat. It kind of gave me Coraline vibes. So that's why I picked it up, and I read another book that gave me Coraline vibes and didn't love it like I thought I would. So I was definitely hesitant going into this one, but this ended up surprising me so much and being a 5-star read and another one of my favorites. This book follows Sarah and her family, and Sarah's grandmother has just passed away. So her and her brother Billy and her parents are going to her grandmother's house to clean up and get the house ready for sale. As you can imagine, that seems really boring to a kid, so the kid's gonna go exploring, and Sarah ends up finding this letter that her grandmother was writing to her, but it went unfinished, and it started out saying, "Strange things are happening behind the bookcase." So Sarah and Billy end up investigating and finding some things that are going on behind the bookcase, and I won't say any more than that. This definitely surprised me. It does have Coraline vibes. It also has kind of like an Alice in Wonderland feel. It also has elements of good and evil, and I loved it so much. I don't even know what all to say about it. There are some illustrations in here that are super creepy and really awesome, and I love it so much. It just really made the story for me, and it is one of my favorites. I read it in one sitting, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for a spooky middle grade. Another spooky middle grade that is more along the lines of just a little bit spooky and more of a mystery. If you like Clue, you might like this one. So that one is going to be Midnight at the Barclay Hotel by Flora Bradley. This was one of my book club picks for my middle grade book club, and we all absolutely love this book. Like I said, if you like Clue or things along the lines of a murder mystery, then this is going to be your type of book. This story follows JJ, and JJ and his mom receive an invitation to go to the Barclay Hotel. His mom is not going to go, but JJ convinces her. He's grounded and he kind of just wants to get out of the house and go with her, and so they go, and it turns out that they're not the only ones that are invited to the Barclay Hotel. It turns out that someone has been murdered and his mom is a suspect, so he is now here with Penny and Emma, and they are trying to figure out the mystery of who murdered who. I'm not going to tell you who is murdered, but it is a murder mystery story, has some paranormal elements as well, and this is just all around a great book. It also has really awesome illustrations in it as well. The artwork is beautiful. If I can find a picture, I will show you. There's a smaller illustration. But yes, this book was so awesome. The author was also so kind and sent me some bookmarks for my kiddos for book club, and yes, I'm just so excited about anything in the future she comes out with. I think she has a new book coming out this year, later in the fall, and I'm stoked for that. But if you are looking for a spooky book that is more along the lines of a murder mystery versus something like super spooky like this, then definitely check out Midnight at the Barclay Hotel. The next book on my list is a sci-fi, and that one is called The Lion of Mars by Jennifer L. Holm. This was a book that really surprised me because I wasn't sure if I liked sci-fi or space books, but I do seem to like them in middle grade. There are some that I'm really intrigued to try, like Orion Lost. I've heard good things about that one, but I haven't read it yet. But The Lion of Mars definitely got me into middle grade sci-fi. So this story follows our main character, Belle. He is 11 years old and he has spent his entire life on Mars. Despite this, he's honestly just a regular kid who loves cats and cake and is pretty nosy about finding out the secrets of why the adults in his colony are keeping these secrets and why they don't connect with other colonies on Mars and why they are so isolated from everybody, why people start acting weird at one point in time, and then a virus breaks out, and it is up to Belle and the rest of the kids on the ship to figure out how they can save the adults, and that might mean reaching out to another colony. My only complaint about this story is that the first half was kind of slow and the last half wrapped up super quickly, but overall I think this was a really interesting book about how kids come together and find out secrets of, there's a little bit of political stuff in there and like how they came to Mars and why they're separated from other colonies, but it's a really cool story just to kind of see how everything weaves together. I did give this one 4 stars, so it's not quite a 5-star, but it's one that I think about a lot and one that I hope to reread someday. Next, I have a few graphic novels, and the first one is going to be Guts by Raina Telgemeier. I did just put this in my graphic novel recommendations video recently, but I loved it so much that I wanted to share it here as well. This is actually the 3rd book in a memoir series, so this does follow Raina Telgemeier's real life, and while it's not exactly how everything went, it is based off of her real life. This is the 3rd book, and the first book is Smile, the 2nd book is Sisters, but I don't think you have to read them in order. I read them out of order. I read Smile, then I read Guts, and then I read Sisters, and Guts is definitely my favorite of all of them, and I would highly recommend this one, especially if you deal with anxiety, because in this story, Raina wakes up with a stomachache one night, but then her mom also has a stomachache, so she thinks it's probably just a bug. But as she goes through school and goes through life with different stresses, she ends up in the doctor's office and finds out that her tummy aches are due to stress and anxiety, and she has to learn how to navigate that and manage all of this in life. So I really wish I would have had this book as a kid, because that would have made so much sense to why I had certain stomach aches, why I had stomach issues, why I still have them some today because of anxiety. So I think this is a really relatable story, and the artwork in these books are always so beautiful. So if you haven't checked out any of Raina Telgemeier's books, I would highly recommend, and Guts is definitely a 5-star read and a good one to check out. Next up is an animal story, and that is going to be Bear by Ben Queen and Joe Todd Stanton. If you don't already know, Ben Queen actually illustrated, I believe, or wrote Disney Pixar Cars 2 and 3, and so if you see some of the illustrations in this book looking similar, that may be why. So Bear is such a touching, heartwarming, heartbreaking story. It is so, so good. It is about this dog named Bear, and Bear is a seeing eye dog, and he is the seeing eye dog for Patrick, who is blind, and they are best friends. Then one day they're out for a walk, and Bear starts to lose his sight, and now he is blind, and he feels like he's just lost his purpose in life. He doesn't feel like he can help Patrick anymore, so he's very distraught. He ends up running away and going on this incredible journey to self-discovery and finding his purpose, and it is just one of the sweetest stories. There are some survival elements in here as well. He's going to come in contact with some bears, some sneaky raccoons. There are some funny moments in the story as well as sad moments, but overall this is such a beautiful story. If you have not picked up Bear, I highly recommend, just look at the artwork. It is so pretty, and the story is just, I mean, it's going to tug at your heartstrings. I definitely think you should pick it up if you haven't already. It is one of my absolute favorites. It's a 5-star read for me and one of my favorite graphic novels. The next graphic novel is also one that has an animal element, and that one is going to be Allergic by Megan Wagner Lloyd and Michelle Mee Nutter. This book was so good, and I don't know why, but I oftentimes forget to talk about it, but it was so, so good. It was a 5-star read for me. It was the cutest graphic novel. This is a coming-of-age story that follows our main character, Maggie, and Maggie is kind of the odd one out at home. Her parents are preparing to have a new baby. Then she has younger brothers who are both twins, and they are kind of connected there. So you can tell that Maggie kind of feels a little bit alone. So she goes to pick out a pet. She wants to pick out a dog, and she finds out that she's allergic when she breaks out in hives and a rash. And it turns out she's not only allergic to dogs, but anything with fur. So she goes through this process of trying different pets out and just can't seem to find the right one. She makes a new friend, and that friend has a pet, and it just seems like she cannot find her fit in the world. So this is just a really sweet story. I love it so much. It's definitely frustrating at times because you feel for Maggie and you just want her to be happy, and it seems like she's facing battles here and there, but it is so good. And if you haven't checked it out, it was a 5-star read, and I think it's a great one to pick up if you love middle grade graphic novels. Sticking with the theme of animals, let's just go ahead and talk about I, Cosmo by Carly Sorosiak. This was another middle grade book club pick, and it was so good. It definitely tugs at your heartstrings once again. So this story follows Cosmo, who is a 13-year-old golden retriever, and he belongs to Max, and Max is his best friend. But Max's parents have been arguing a lot lately, and divorce has come up in the conversation. So this does handle some pretty heavy topics, but Max decides that he wants to enter Cosmo into a canine freestyle dance competition in hopes to convince his parents that they all should stay together, remind them of the happier times in life, and to convince them not to separate him and Cosmo. So this story is definitely going to tug at your heartstrings. There are going to be happy moments and sad moments. I will say, if you are worried about this being a book because there's a 13-year-old dog, if you're worried about the dog dying, the dog is not going to die. And I want to tell you that because I know sometimes people avoid books if they know the dog is going to die. So just know that going in, that's not this kind of story, but I would highly recommend checking it out. Like I said, it does deal with some heavier topics, but it is such a heartwarming story, and it is narrated by Cosmo, and I just think that makes it even better of a story. Next up, I have a couple of historical fictions, and the first one is Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth by Sheila O'Connor. This was my favorite middle grade book of 2021, so I'm really excited to recommend it to you guys again. This is set during the Vietnam War, and it follows our main character, 12-year-old Renee Kelly. And Renee Kelly is living with her grandmother and with her 2 brothers right now because her dad is off trying to make some money because their mom has recently passed away, and I think it was due to cancer. I can't remember exactly what medically was going on, but I think she was dying from cancer, and so they have medical bills piling up, and so her dad is having to work that off while her and her brothers stay with her grandmother. So she has taken up a paper route, and again, this is during the Vietnam War, and she comes across on her paper route Mr. Marsworth, who is the town recluse, and he is also very anti-war. So if you know anything about the Vietnam War, you know that people were very divided about this war. Some people believe that it should have been fought and we should have been involved in it, and other people believe we should not have. So this kind of tackles that topic, but it also does it in such an amazing way because you get to see this relationship form between Renee Kelly and Mr. Marsworth, so this 12-year-old and this older man. And I think it's a really, really heartwarming and sweet. And Renee's older brother actually has to draft into the war, and she doesn't want him to go. And so Mr. Marsworth is trying to help her out with that and just kind of console her and see if they can figure out a way where he doesn't have to go to the war. And also, this book is completely written in letters. I know that might deter some people from reading this, but there is something about reading this written in letters that makes you connect so much more with the characters. I really find that the books that I read like this really immerse me into the story and get me connected with the characters and with the atmosphere so much more. So I would highly recommend checking this one out. It really tugged at my heartstrings. I feel like I've been saying that with a lot of these books, but they truly do. This one had me bawling my eyes out by the time it was over. It was just so good. It made me laugh. It made me cry. Overall, a fantastic book and one that I would recommend above all the rest. Along those same lines, we have another historical fiction that I would consider to be a warm hug. So if you're looking for a warm hug of a book, I would recommend picking up A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. This story follows our three main characters who are siblings, and they are William, Edmund, and Anna, and they have been living with their grandmother during World War II, but she has passed away and they have no other living relatives. So they get sent off to the English countryside because this is the time where the kids were being kind of sent off to the countryside for safety during the war, but their lawyer or whoever is working with them tries to convince them to try to find a foster family while they're there, but not to tell anybody because they actually have some money under their belt and they don't want anybody to choose to foster them or to keep them and adopt them because of their money. So while they are jumping from home to home on the countryside and people think they're just there as refugees, they're also trying to find a family. Then you also have Nora, who is the town librarian in the countryside, and she is one of my favorite book characters, but the town has kind of turned their nose up to Nora, and you don't really know why, except that she has some kind of bad connection with this war, and her husband might have done something that is looked down upon with the town, but these kids fall in love with Nora. They don't know any of that. They just go to the library and they find refuge there. And yeah, you just have to pick it up and see what happens from there. But like I said, this is definitely a warm hug of a story. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, but it is such a good one and one of my favorite middle grades. I only have 2 more books on this list, and the first one is going to be A Mall Unbound by Aisha Saeed. I picked this one up for a book club last year, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not just because it's not something I typically pick up, but I absolutely love this one. This one follows a kind of cultural story about Amal, and Amal has a dream of becoming a teacher, but she lives in Pakistan and her life is not as easy as ours might be here in the States. And I learned a lot about what it's like for Pakistani people, maybe not all of them, but at least in some parts of their country, what life is like for them. And in Amal's case, she is part of a town who is run by the Khan family, and she ends up running across one of the Khan royals and kind of disgracing him, and she ends up being forced into indentured servitude. And just getting to see that side of life, it's kind of a culture shock, not quite as much of a culture shock as if you were to walk into that in real life, but definitely reading this opened my eyes to a culture that I did not know that much about. And so I really enjoyed that, and I definitely want to read more along these lines in the future. One of my favorite quotes is a quote that is written across the top on the back, so I want to share that with you. It says, "If anyone ever decided nothing could change, nothing ever would." So I really hope that you decide to pick this one up. Like I said, it is definitely a little bit of a culture shock. It is a heavier story, but it's going to tell you a lot about the Pakistani culture and what people have to go through, what women have to go through to be successful. And it's really not easy. It's a really hard life, and they have a really broken system, at least in Amal's case. So just getting to see a glimpse of that was really insightful for me. There's also a book coming out this year called Omar Rising that I'm so excited about, and I think it's going to be like breaking off from this story. I don't know if Amal's going to be in it, but I think they're kind of tied together, and I'm so excited to read that one as well. This was just a 4-star read for me, but it was so good, highly memorable. It was just one of my favorite things that I read last year, and so yeah, if this sounds interesting to you, I would recommend checking it out. And the last book on my list is going to be Alone by Megan E. Freeman. This is a little bit more of a dystopian novel, and it follows our main character, Maddie. And Maddie comes up with a scheme to have a sleepover with one of her friends in her grandparents' cabin, but something happens and she wakes up the next morning and her town has been abandoned. No one is there. She has no idea where anybody is, but people have left their homes, they've left their pets, and she is left to fend for herself and try to figure out what is going on here. Her only companion is a Rottweiler named George, and so she and George are going off into the town trying to survive, basically. She's trying to survive the elements, trying to survive looters, trying to survive natural disasters, you name it. This girl is going through it all, and this is a really awesome novel because not only is it dystopian, and also the reason I picked it up is because it reminded me of Hatchet by Gary Paulson, which, let me just go ahead and tell you, they're two totally different things. Hatchet is more of a wilderness story, and while this is like a survival story, she is in a town with certain different resources there, so keep that in mind. But it's also written in verse, so it makes it really easy to get through. I will say that this is more of an upper middle grade novel. There are a couple instances of language that I would not recommend to like an 8 to 12-year-old. And there's also an instance of animal violence that I honestly feel like was really unnecessary to the story, but it is there nonetheless. So just keep that in mind going into this one. But I do find that it was a really good story. I gave it 5 stars, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for a good dystopian middle grade. All right, y'all, that is all the books that I want to recommend to you today. I hope that you found some to add to your middle grade March TBR or just to your middle grade list of books you want to read in general. If you've read any of these, let me know down in the comments what you thought. If I piqued your interest in any of these books, let me know what you thought. And if you had never heard of middle grade March and I just introduced you, let me know because I'm super stoked about it. I hope you're stoked about it too. It is one of my favorite times of the year, and I am so excited to find so many more middle grade books to love and recommend to you. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button down below, and if you want to see more videos from me, you can hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notifications whenever I post a new video. As always, I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, friends.